All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. You know how this works.
Yeah.
We take a fascinating topic or a weird piece of internet history, and we just dive in and see what we find. And today, oh boy, do we have a doozy.
Looking forward to it.
We're looking at a list from the top10s.com, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's this website where people can make and vote on, like, top 10 lists of anything. And this one is, well, let's just say it's thought-provoking, right? Top 10 dumbest things to do with $1,000.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's quite a premise.
Right. Like when you think about it, it's almost like a social experiment or something.
Yeah.
What do people consider the absolute worst ways to use money?
I mean, on a very basic level, it's got to be funny, right?
Oh, absolutely. Some of these are just ridiculous. I mean, the first few are like, burn the money, eat it, flush it down the toilet. Okay, not exactly financial genius at work there.
Yeah, it's almost like a rejection of the whole concept of money, right? Like almost a primal scream against, I don't know, financial responsibility.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's like, oh, you want me to be sensible with my money? Watch this. I'm going to light it on fire.
Exactly. But then you get entries that are a little more, well, nuanced. For example, there's buy a mountain of 50 Shades of Grey books. Now, we can debate the literary merit of that particular series.
Oh, I think we could spend a whole other deep dive on that one.
Absolutely. But financially speaking, it's not exactly what you'd call a wise investment.
No, definitely not. But it is kind of funny in its own, like, absurd consumerism way.
Exactly. It speaks to our fascination with excess, even if it's pointless excess. But then there are some entries that are, well, a bit more thought-provoking, like bury the money in your backyard. That's when we start to get into some interesting psychological territory.
Right, because, okay, I can kind of understand the impulsive, destructive stuff. But burying money, what's going on there?
I think it speaks to a distrust of traditional financial systems. Banks, investments, the whole thing. It's like this primal urge to hoard your wealth, even if it means literally burying it in the dirt.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, because you contrast that with another item on the list, which is use the $1,000 to take out a loan.
Ah, yes. No, that's the opposite end of the spectrum, isn't it? One is about safeguarding what you have, even if it's in the most primitive way. The other is about leveraging what you have to potentially gain more, even if it comes with risks.
I hadn't thought about it that way. That's really interesting. So we're kind of seeing both sides of this anxiety about money, right? The fear of losing it versus the desire to make it grow, even if it means taking a gamble.
Exactly. And I think those anxieties are very much present in our society today. We're constantly bombarded with messages about wealth, about success, about making the most of our money.
Totally. I mean, think about all the financial advice out there. Invest, save, budget. It can be overwhelming.
Absolutely. And I think for some people, this list is a way of poking fun at that pressure, of saying, what if I just did the absolute dumbest thing possible with my money?
It's like a rebellion against the whole personal finance industrial complex.
Exactly. And it's not just about fear and anxiety either. Some of these entries are just about pure, unadulterated instant gratification.
Right. Like, I think there's one about spending the whole $1,000 on a single chocolate bar. Not the best long-term investment strategy, maybe?
Probably not. But it does speak to our desire for immediate pleasure. And in a world where we're constantly told to delay gratification, save for the future, invest wisely, it's almost refreshing to see someone just say, you know what? I'm going to enjoy this one giant chocolate bar right now.
It's like a mini vacation from responsible adulthood.
Precisely. A little burst of hedonism in a world that often feels very serious and restrictive.
But then, of course, we have to talk about the elephant in the room,
Mhm.
the entries that are, well, a bit more controversial.
Yes, the ones that might make some people uncomfortable. Rub it in poor people's faces, for example, or use it to kill someone.
Yeah, those are definitely pushing the boundaries of humor.
Absolutely. And it's important to acknowledge that not everyone will find these entries funny. In fact, many people will find them offensive. And that's understandable. But I think it's also important to remember that humor can be a very complex thing. Sometimes it's a way of processing difficult emotions. Sometimes it's a way of highlighting injustice. And sometimes it's just a way of being shocking or provocative.
So how do we even begin to interpret these more unsettling entries?
I think we have to consider the context. This is a list of dumbest things to do with money. So it's inherently about pushing boundaries, about exploring the absurd. And within that context, these darker entries might be seen as a form of satire. a way of highlighting the absurdity of wealth disparity or the dangers of greed and violence by taking them to their most extreme and ridiculous conclusions.
It's like by making these horrible things seem so ludicrously dumb, it's actually a way of condemning them.
Exactly. It's a way of saying, look how ridiculous this is. Look how absurd it would be to actually do these things. And in doing so, it's actually drawing attention to the very real problems that these entries represent.
Huh. That's a really interesting way to think about it. So it's not so much about endorsing these actions as it is about using humor to hold up a mirror to them.
Precisely. And it's up to each individual to decide whether or not they find that humor effective or even appropriate. But I think it's important to at least try to understand the intent behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, just when you think the list couldn't get any weirder, we get to the contenders section, which is basically a whole other list of even more outlandish ideas.
Ah, yes. The contenders, where the truly bizarre and creative minds shine.
Exactly. I mean, we've got, like, use it to train pigeons to attack your enemies. Spend it on a lifetime supply of condoms, even though you're still a virgin. I mean, it's like, where do people even come up with this stuff?
I think it's a testament to the power of the human imagination. When you give people the freedom to be completely absurd, the results can be truly fascinating.
And hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got to give them credit. Some of these are just pure comedic gold.
Absolutely. And I think that's an important part of this whole list. It's not just about exploring the dark side of our relationship with money. It's also about having fun with it, about letting go of the seriousness and just embracing the absurdity.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good reminder that even something as potentially stressful as money can be a source of humor and creativity.
Exactly. And sometimes a little bit of laughter is all we need to take the edge off.
So after all this, I guess the question is, what have we learned from our deep dive into the dumbest things to do with $1,000?
I think we've learned that our relationship with money is a lot more complicated than we might think. It's about fear, it's about desire, it's about security, it's about freedom. It's about trying to make sense of a world where money often feels like it has too much power.
Yeah, I mean, it's made me think about my own relationship with money in a whole new way. What I value, how I spend it, what I'm willing to risk.
And that, I think, is the real value of this list. It's not just about the dumb things we could do with money. It's about what our choices say about us.
So I guess the challenge for all of us listening is, if you were handed $1,000 right now, what would you do with it? Would you be practical? Would you indulge? Would you try to build that pigeon army?
Only you can decide.
And that's the beauty of it. The choice is yours. So use it wisely, use it foolishly, use it to buy a mountain of 50 Shades of Grey books. Whatever you choose, just make sure it reflects what truly matters to you.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time.